Hello and welcome back to the 1963 YouTube channel. You know that I primarily work with watercolor and you will often find me indulging in watercolor cityscapes and urbanscapes. However, in this constant journey of growth, learning and improvising my art, I have also indulged in plenty commissions around floral watercolors. And so you'll find that today's video is a piece which was made recently and was delivered to my patron about less than a week ago. My patron came to me specifically asking for decor on her grey walls, and according to her mother, Vastu required them to put up something blue along their northern wall. So if you follow me on Instagram, you already know that I had once painted blue hydrangeas for a friend's wedding invites. And when this particular patron, she came to me, she asked for blue hydrangeas because she particularly liked the details that went on the petals of these hydrangeas. After so many discussions, we were able to finish the work in less than 3 days, and after that we also had elaborate discussions around the framing part. And if you wish to see more of the Blue Hydrangea series, you should head to my Instagram page 1963_reinventing. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you should do so, and also share this video with your friends and family who you think might gain something from this video. And why you should subscribe is because, don't forget, I still have the entire collection from the 2022 floral calendar series, the paintings individually that I'm yet to upload, and those will more be in the form of reviews because that was some work that I had done about a year ago, and I feel like a lot has changed in my painting techniques since then. Few people I know on Instagram have asked me to share a tutorial on how to paint hydrangeas, and so here I go. Watch the video till the end, and I promise you making hydrangeas will be so easy for you by the end of this video that you'd want to definitely make them. So first things first, we are going to go very systematically about this painting. As you can see, I have picked a cobalt shade of blue and I'm mixing it with a tad bit of black to sort of mute the color. This does not at all mean that I'm trying to darken the color, because that's not at all how we darken or lighten a color. Those are also ways, but that is not exactly something you do when you need to darken the color. If you notice, I have also kept 2 shades of purple ready, and I have kept my brushes ready as well, meaning I have already dipped them in water. Why, you might ask? Because when you keep your brushes soaked in water, they have a better capacity to hold the pigments, and so especially when you're working with watercolor, you need fluffier brushes. So as you can see, what I have done as my very first step is started with the blue. To make it sound very simple to you, I am going to cover the entire base layer, the first layer of the entire surface of the hydrangea bunch with blue color, and parts of it which feel like parts which have sort of faded or lost colors or may seem like they are behind in the cluster, I want them to color with a few other tints like the purples. I have 2 shades of purple ready with me. So as you can see, I have already applied them on certain areas, and the idea is to not go too heavy on the pigment, and even when you're introducing the purple color, try to use a little more water and sort of blend it out together. Remember that you do not have to go for definition at all at this stage. All you have to do is cover the base, which is 1 layer of color which is heavily water filled and very less pigment. If you're familiar with brushes, you know that I am using a mop brush size 2. I find it the best and the perfect size considering the size of my painting as well. I feel that this brush size fits perfectly because it is capable of holding a lot of water, which is like the thumb rule in this layer. For those of you who have already found me on Instagram, you know that I am a big coffee addict. And yes, I know coffee tends to make people very fidgety and anxious, but somehow I cannot start a painting without having brewed my cup of coffee. And lately I've been inclining a little more towards espressos. I've already mentioned this before, but just to reiterate my point, had you asked me to paint flowers such as peonies or hydrangeas, which are a little more intricate considering the number of petals that they have are really heavy, I wouldn't have been able to go ahead or proceed with the painting. Why? Because it is a very patient task and you need certain techniques and understanding of strokes. There's so many things that you really need to imbibe in terms of skills, and so eventually I started challenging myself and try and experiment with how I could go ahead with something as beautiful as hydrangeas, and I feel like I'm almost there, although I don't feel this is completely it. I'm still learning a lot, but I love sharing whatever insight I have gained through my experiments. So as you can see, now we are on to our next layer after the first layer has completely dried up. Now as you can see in the second layer that I have gone ahead with, firstly the first layer has completely dried up and only then I'm going ahead with my second layer. Why? Because here I will need a little bit of definition, and if you notice, you will see that I've actually started around the peripheral areas a little more. Why? Because these petals, according to my understanding of this picture's shadows and highlights, I feel like these are also the petals that are underneath and naturally will be more under the shadow area, and the little florets that are right at the center are more exposed to light, and so they will have lighter colors. So my color palette is not a very dark one, so if you notice, the petals that I've started with have completely been defined by a darker shade of blue. So what you have to do in the second layer is go around on those petals which you feel are underneath and are definitely under the shadow area. Use a slightly more pigmented version of your same blue, and don't mind playing around with the purple or pink or even gray if you have to introduce in this area. The fact that I've used the purple on this picture sort of makes the color palette a little interesting and more. Even when you find flowers in nature, you will see that colors can be very tricky. It is just not what you think it is. For example, I could have covered this entire bunch in only blue, but sometimes flowers go through decoloration, or the factor of light tends to act up in different ways and will almost trick you into believing that the exact same bunch of hydrangeas which are actually blue also tend to have some other colors in them. And no, I'm not at all talking about bicolor flowers. Those are a different concept altogether. So now coming back to the painting technique, what you'll find me doing is I am using two brushes. One is a round detailing brush and the other would be a liner detailing brush. The round detailing brush naturally being the one which can hold more of the pigment along with the water, I'm using it to apply the strokes, and I'm going about through the shapes of these petals where the shadows will be. And after I apply the stroke, I go in with my liner brush, which is simply dipped in water, and I try and blend in. I do not particularly want my layers to come off very harsh, so I am blending with the second brush. So for the next few minutes, this is the exact technique that I'll be following, and you will notice that around the periphery of this entire bunch, it appeared to me that these were petals that were more in the shadow area, and so I'll be using darker shades of the same blue. And on the top layers, especially the top petals, you will see how I will be diluting them a lot more, because this is where I believe the maximum amount of light hits the bunch. Very slowly and eventually I was able to cover one petal after another, and this is exactly why I called it a very painstaking yet very patient process, because ultimately the results are very satisfying, and it's not one of those flowers which you can finish off just in 2 layers. You have to patiently go about and beautifully, intricately detail each of the petals, and I promise you the results are going to be worth it. Now, while you're watching the screen, let me quickly remind you that you have to subscribe to my channel, because I do promise to bring a lot into this channel where I try and explain as much as I can from my findings. And please don't forget to hit the like button, because that means a lot to me. I would love to know if you have your own findings or even your thoughts, or even if you have questions, please leave them in the comment section and I'll gladly try and answer them as well. If you wish to see more of this series, you can also find me on Instagram, which is 1963_reinventing, where you will find much more updates about this entire collection. So yeah, the first layer is the easiest layer, and the second layer is the one where you actually start carving out the shadows. And the tricky part which I wish to explain to you is that you don't exactly mark the shadow of the petal onto which you're painting. You're actually marking out the shadow of the petal that is actually meant to be above the one on which you're painting. So let me quickly explain it to you in an easier manner. For example, so here I go in and mark a stroke which is actually meant to be a shadow of the other petal, and exactly the same thing has been repeated here. I go in with a stroke which actually marks the petal which is above it in the form of a shadow, and then you're supposed to use your other brush which is only filled with water and dilute it a little bit. even before you realize, while you're going about each and every petal, your other petals would already have dried up, which means by the time you're over with the second layer, you're already ready to start with the third layer and get into the detailing part a little bit. At this point, you'd ask me what more detailing is left. Detailing would only mean, compared to the shadow area that you created in the previous layer, you're supposed to make it a little more with depth, a little more brighter in terms of shadow, so that it distinguishes better. If at all, you can also go ahead with the little lines and stripes that fall onto the petals and mark them out as well, as you will see me doing. And what also happens is, between most of these individual little flower heads, there is a lot of space on the background, which I'll definitely mark out with a very dark shade of blue, as you can see me doing, and that sort of provides a more distinguished feature to the flowers individually. And yes, except for the background, which is going to be completely covered in a dark shade of blue, we go back again onto the petals, applying this third layer with the same technique, where you apply one brush stroke and eventually you fade it out with another brush. What's interesting at this point is, you will find out that sometimes I apply one stroke of the blue and another stroke of the purple and then blend out the two colors together, so that it looks like a beautiful blend of the two colors. Naturally, this has been a longer video in comparison to my other ones. But once you understand the technique, you'll see that it's the same thing going over and over and over again until you are satisfied with the final outlook. At this point, I could say that my painting is almost coming to an end, and this is only one piece amongst 4 other pieces. I hope you had fun and I hope you were able to learn something out of this video. This is literally just one piece from a series of 4 paintings, and this piece reflects one of my more recent works, and I will bring you more floral artworks. But until then, bye bye.